Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host. I'm going to go in hot. And I'm going to start with a question. Do you think we can honestly speak or talk about health and wellness without talking about fat loss? I'm going to leave you with that for one quick second while I thank every single one of you for all your reviews, for listening, for sharing the episodes, and for leaving your reviews and your ratings on the different platforms. We have a new review here from Talis8. She says, great podcast, always informative and real, a must listen. Well, Talis8, thank you very much for leaving your review here. And if you're listening to this and you love the content that I share here on this podcast, please make sure that you rate the podcast, leave the review on the platform that you use. All right. Now that we're done with the formalities, let's get back to the nitty-gritty of what today's conversation is about. So the question was, do you think that we can have a conversation or that we can talk about or speak about health and wellness and well-being without talking about fat loss? And for me, the answer is no. If we want to be honest with that conversation, if we want real solutions, it is virtually impossible to speak about health and wellness and well-being without having a conversation about fat loss, calories, and body composition. It just is impossible. And I'm going to tell you why. But before I tell you why, I want to share with you what got my wheels spinning around having this conversation. So I don't know if you know, but if you don't, you will. I do quite a lot of presentations for businesses, corporations, law firms. That is something that I'm very passionate about. And I come in to talk about health and wellness, especially for women in juggling it all, like how to simplify the process so it doesn't become so overwhelming. And the reason I decided to go into this is because I feel like we have very good firsthand experience and very good insight to know exactly what high-performing women in the workforce who are juggling 70,000 million things, what they struggle with. And we get to listen to the true reasons behind their struggles. Not the fluffy one that they might fill out in a work application or in a wellness program through the workplace and things like that, which is normally the more like politically correct version or sanitized version of what they truly want to say. So we get to hear the true reason. I mean, I'm pretty sure that over 5,000 women is a very big pool of data to understand what these struggles are. So one of the presentations that I have done, I'm not going to say when because I don't want to cause problems. But anyhow, I got a feedback because always after the presentation, I like to send a feedback form. And it's interesting because you have like a zillion tens and then there is like that one or two. And I always like to listen and hear the one or two because it helps me gain perspective. So in this one, the reaction from this feedback was that the person was very disappointed because in a health and wellness presentation, I was talking about fat loss and calories and how, I'm exaggerating here, like, but how dare you? Oh my goodness. This needs to be about like health and wellness and like all these nebula terms. And honestly, this got me thinking. The reason why it got me thinking is that because it allows me to put two and two together, that this reaction is exactly why so many wellness programs and talks are fluffy, vague, ineffective, and they are hard to apply because it's leaving people in a position where they're becoming so worried about saying things that can be perceived as problematic or not politically correct that they end up, or we as a fitness industry end up saying things that are not practical or are not useful because we don't want to ruffle feathers or we don't want to speak the truth. The reality is that if we're not willing to talk about body composition, metabolism, and the real health markers, we're not helping anyone. We just end up playing wellness theater with all these vague, nebulous terms and like clean eating, when what I see day in and day out is a combination of a number of things where body composition, fat loss, calories are a part of the conversation. So this episode today is for women who are tired of surface level advice. I'm going to go in a tangent here, which is actually one of the reasons why I started doing these health and wellness presentations for workplaces, because I have a lot of friends that do corporate wellness programs. And I looked at the information and I was like, with all due respect, this is garbage. It's not applicable, is out of touch, is stone deaf. Imagine like going to a room of C-suite executives and being like, listen, you cannot be stressed. That is not practical advice. It's not something that you can put into practice. It's just like a ticking a box. Yep, we have a wellness program, off we go. And then it ends up everybody pretending. The people pretending they were being helped and the service providers pretending that they were helping. But then ultimately, no changes happen. So this episode today is for women who are tired of the surface level advice, who have been doing all the quote unquote right things, and yet they still don't feel at home in their bodies. They don't feel like themselves. And for the women who are truly ready to have a real, respectful, and evidence-based conversation about what the problem is, what the root cause of the problem is, what the solution to the problem is, and what actually works in practicality to a busy female professional's life. And here is why this conversation needs to be had. Okay? Let's look quickly at the data. And you're going to start to understand why it is so difficult, if not impossible, to talk about health and wellness without talking about body composition, fat loss, and calories. I'm going to give you the US stats, okay, because the majority of our listeners are in the US, but quite honestly, I don't think that the data is looking much different in many places across the globe. So over 70% of US adults are either overweight or obese. 42% of adults meet the criteria for clinical obesity. And that number is not going down, it's only going up. The average American sits between 6.5 to 9 hours per day. And for those who have a more sedentary job, like desk workers, you can even exceed that. And here's where things start to get, that you're going to start to see things, okay? Sedentary behavior is linked to a higher risk of insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and anxiety and depression. Even in people who exercise, So even if you exercise, if the other time you're still being very sedentary, that risk still exists. For women over 35, we have the hormonal disruptions that come with early perimenopause and then menopause and postmenopause. Up to 90% of women report perimenopausal symptoms by their mid 30s, including weight gain, fatigue, sleep issues, and mood swings. Women in midlife are more likely to experience chronic stress for a number of reasons. It's a season of life where they're likely ascending their careers. They have aging parents that are needing more attention, and a lot of times they become a caretaker to those aging parents, but they also have aging kids who start to get more involved in different types of sports, club sports, traveling sports. So these women are being pulled in all kinds of different directions. So life's changing, hormones are changing, body composition is changing, and they don't know where to go, what to do. And all of this stress elevates cortisol and contributes to abdominal fat gain, poor recovery, and sleep disruption. Now let's talk about mental health and body image. Because studies have shown that women who don't feel confident in their bodies are more likely to experience social withdrawal, low energy, and workplace burnout. And I can say this as someone who speaks with women every single day who are struggling with their bodies. These women are skipping in family events. They're skipping on vacation to beautiful places. Or even if they go, they are not able to fully enjoy the experience and be present because they feel uncomfortable in their bodies. The preparation for the trip and they stress to find what fits and, oh my goodness, am I going to look good in a swimming suit? And what if I feel uncomfortable? All the stress almost like takes away the joy of the moments. I've spoken with women who hadn't been intimate with their husbands for a year and a half because they didn't want to be seen naked. I have spoken with attorneys who started to get their associates to go to trial because they didn't want to be in court, like speaking in front of a bunch of people because they didn't feel confident and comfortable in their bodies. So we can see here and talk and pretend that the feeling of living in a body that doesn't feel like it belongs to you, we can pretend that that doesn't exist and just tell women, you just should be so grateful and oh my goodness, which then just exacerbates the anxiety, the depression, the stress, the mental fatigue. Or we can talk about the problem and do something about it. And there is a strong link between body dissatisfaction and depressive symptoms, even in women who are outwardly successful. This is the data. So, trying to talk about wellness and health, mental health, physical health, and let's not even talk about the impacts of excessive adipose tissue on the physical health. I think that that is well established. The interesting thing is that, like, the global wellness market right now is worth over $4.5 trillion. And most of them are focused on short-term trends. You know, the vague messaging and the non-specific feel-good approaches. Let's all feel good, queens. Let's embrace our bodies. Let's empower each other. What the fuck do you mean? Because if I'm doing breath work and clanging crystals and, you know, doing all the shit that is supposed to be quote unquote wellness, but I still feel dissatisfied and unhappy and unhealthy in the body that I live, there is no amount of breath work, journaling, and staff meeting with Jesus that is going to remove that noise that lives rent-free in the back of our minds. And despite an increased access to wellness tools and all these feel-goods and detox, and it's just about seed oils and organic and chemicals and like all the bullshit. Despite all of that, despite the access to information, obesity, burnout, metabolic disease are rising, which I think is pretty safe to say that the current wellness fluffy, not getting to the bottom of what the problem is not working. And in my opinion, the bottom of it is a lack of objective information on what actually works and what doesn't. If we're not talking about in a objective sense and practical sense on how a calorie deficit works and how your hormones play a role in impacting the calories in and calories out, if we're not talking about how sleep disruption impacts your caloric consumption and your caloric output, if we're not giving people the power of knowledge in explaining how simple the process can be, they are going to keep on being inundated with all the bullshit that is out there on social media by charlatans. They're selling the idea of wellness in telling people to focus on, and I have a full episode on this too, like on anti-inflammatory foods, when the most anti-inflammatory thing that you can do is to reduce adipose tissue. So trying to focus on these small little bits of what is perceived as quote unquote wellness without addressing the problem of excess adiposity, which is the case for 70% of the population, is like trying to put water in a leaky bucket and then wonder why it's not staying there. So women are focusing and stressing and being busy. They're doing the things, but they're doing the things that are the 5% of what is going to move the needle, instead of using their time wisely to focus on the 90% of what is going to move the needle. That is true wellness. That is peace of mind. And the problem that we're seeing right now is that a message like this is not perceived as quote unquote wellness, because the modern wellness messaging has become so sanitized, vague, and obsessed with being politically correct that whenever you speak the truth, you are labeled, oh my God, it's so toxic. That's so wrong. No, it's not wrong. It's not not politically correct. It is the truth. And I am not entirely sure why most wellness programs avoid the conversation about calories, fat loss, and giving practical structure. I don't know. Because if the ultimate goal of wellness, the idea of wellness in health, is to help the person reduce the stress, improve their sleep, the best thing you can do is to improve body composition, to exercise, to shorten the bridge of what they're not doing and where they can get started. Because everything is being perceived as so overwhelming, and that you need all these fancy ingredients, and then you need to think about the anti-inflammatory food and then the toxic food and avoid seed oils. And God forbid you eat something that is not organic from, the top of the Himalayan with a splash of a blood of a virgin. God forbid you're not doing all those things. But who has time for that? But the moment you start to talk about things that are practical, that involve the conversation around body composition, aka fat loss and muscle gain, the moment that you start talking about calories and you start to talk about the need for protein, oh my goodness me, that's not wellness. It is. And because there is being such a big gap between reality and between, this utopic universe that a lot of those people that live in a perceived wellness space, it is a utopic, delusional, really, reality that does not fit in the life of someone who is working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, has a bunch of kids, has kids in sports, has a sick parent, he still tries to live somewhat of a social life. The unnecessary stress with the obsession of eating clean and organic and detoxing, the obsession with that is generating much more stress, which ultimately is complete the opposite of what wellness should be, which is an overall health, body and mind. But saying this is being labeled as toxic and as some kind of extreme, and then you get shamed or you get pushed back by speaking the facts at the most foundational level. And I have a few theories as to why the modern wellness messaging is becoming so annoyingly sanitized and politically correct that I fucking can't. I think that the first one is there is a fear of backlash to speak more openly about it because we're living in an era of what I like to call toxic body positivity and like health of every size. And you can't be healthy at every size in the long run. Your markers might be great right now, but we have plenty of data to support that being severely overweight or obese, it's not healthy. I don't know who is trying to sell the bullshit that it is, but it isn't. So we need to call a spade a spade. And then many brands and coaches are afraid to be labeled as toxic or quote unquote fat phobic or promoting diet culture by speaking about the most fundamental part of what wellness is. Then to avoid being canceled or criticized, they play it safe and then they stay very vague. And it's all the terms like, we need to focus on being our best and loving our bodies. And listen, I'm all about loving your body. But if it is getting to a point that it's impacting your quality of life, like let's say you're carrying so much excess fat that your back and your knees are giving out, focusing on anti-inflammatory foods, it's not going to be the solution of your problem. Losing weight is. But because of the sanitized version, nobody can say that. Like I see this sometimes, even when I speak with people in a one-on-one capacity, they're like, oh my goodness me, I'm like severely overweight, my knee hurts. Oh, maybe it's because of my like anti-inflammatory food that I'm not eating. No, it's not the anti-inflammatory food. It's because you're carrying excess weight and it's putting a big load on your knees. And I know some of the faces that I get when I say this, like, oh my goodness me, look at her. Like, is fat shaming? No, I'm not fat shaming. I'm speaking the truth. And then there is also the desire to be inclusive. And I'm all about inclusion. But I will never be inclusive at the cost of honesty. And this messaging of wanting to appeal to everyone will leave you avoiding talking about anything that might make someone feel uncomfortable. But the problem is that often means that there's going to be an avoidance to the very conversation that could lead to real health and wellness outcomes, especially for those that are silently struggling. And because you have those people that are like, I am happy in all sizes and everything is so great. Listen, if that is you, great. I love that for you, boo. But that is not the case to 99.9% of the women that I personally speak with. And then what happens is they listen to some of these people and they're like, I absolutely do not feel like that. I feel like I have to put a facade and like just to put the fake until you make it vibe out there. It makes me feel inadequate. It makes me feel like there is something wrong with me. So we need to speak the truth. And then there is like the surface level marketing because it sells. Self-care, clean girl routines, the vague buzzwords like glow, diet culture, wellness. They all sound nice. And I'm pretty sure that there is something good behind it. But as a whole, I feel like they're not moving the needle for a woman who is like 42 years old, trying to feel good in her body, trying to feel like herself again in her body, while managing a team, a house, kids, a spouse, hormones, aging parent, sporting events for kids, and all of that. It's wellness theater. Plain and simple. Sometimes I watch stuff on TikTok and Instagram and it's like wellness routine. I'm like, bitch, I'm like, what? I got to get my kids to school at 7:45. They have to be in their seats at 7:45. I ain't got time for like the 55 cold plunging, sauna, dry scrubbing, like routine in the morning. I would have to be up at 4. Stop it. And then there is also the lack of real expertise. A lot of wellness coaches, and I can say this because I have done lifestyle and wellness programs in very reputable institutions. And some of the things that I heard coming out of people's mouth in that group, it's astonishing. They don't have the expertise and the knowledge to understand the most basic fundamental of energy balance. So they can't speak on it. So they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to talk about calories. They don't know how to talk about metabolism. They don't know about hormones. They don't understand periodization and progressive overload. So instead of really getting to the root cause and learning about it, which is a lot more scientific than the flu stuff, they will go with the vague terminology. I'm a wellness coach. I help my clients with wellness. The fuck that is. It sounds good, but it isn't enough. It isn't enough to truly move the needle. And then what happens is that women are left with feel good fluff, but they still haven't got their problem solved. Which what happens? It adds more to the stress. It adds more to the pressure. Yet it adds more to the discontentment in their bodies. It adds more to the inadequacy because they find themselves being successful in all these areas of life. And they're like, holy shit, why is it that I cannot figure it out on this one part of my life? And then they feel like something is broken with them. Nothing is broken with these women. The only thing that is broken is the strategies that they're using because you're being sold this delusional idea of quote unquote wellness that does not help anybody. So here's what actually works. Actually, before we talk about what actually works, we need to talk about what is actually toxic. Because I do believe that there is a layer of toxicity that the conversation about body composition, fat loss, and calories can get to. I have been in it as a former competitor. You all know my story. Like in the first few episodes, I talked a lot about what I personally experienced in that very toxic environment. So what is really toxic is not completely removing the conversation about fat loss. What is truly toxic is the rigid, restrictive plans, the all or nothing approaches, the perfectionist mentality, telling women to just quote unquote listen to their bodies when their hormones are all over the place and they're exhausted. I mean, they're going to listen to their bodies. They're going to take a nap all day, every day. But that's not feasible. Listen to your body and make sure that you stress less. How am I going to walk into a room full of, like, for example, attorneys in big law? How am I going to be able to look at those women and be like, you know what? You need to stress less. It is delusional. It is tone deaf. It is not reality. So we need to stop telling women that, listen to your body and like, just try to stress less. Like how? So we need to make also very clear that this has nothing to do with aesthetics. It's about function. It's about energy. It's about longevity. It's about quality of life. It's about being able to create memories with your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren because you are an abled body, because you feel comfortable putting a swimming suit on and running on the beach with your kids, because you want to be touched by your spouse instead of pushing him or her away because you don't feel comfortable in your body. And then your spouse ends up thinking that they are the problem and they're being rejected because they don't know what is living rent-free inside your mind. It's about asking for the pay raise because you have the confidence within yourself to walk in a room like a bad bitch that you are, instead of shying away and not stepping to the next level of your possibilities because you're constantly thinking about how you feel about yourself inside your body. This has nothing to do with aesthetics and everything to do with having peace. Peace to know that the process is a lot simpler than the modern wellness makes it sound like. It's about the quality of life. It's about your longevity. It's about the quality of life as you age. It's all of it. This isn't superficial conversation about just, and I'm doing air quotes, just fat loss and muscle building. It goes way beyond that. But given the stats that we have right now on obesity, this is the first step. And that's why fat loss has to be a part of the conversation. Excess fat impacts your hormones. It impacts how you experience menopause and perimenopause and the hormonal changes. It impacts how you experience stress. It impacts your sleep, impacts your energy to do the things that you love with the people that you love, to do your work efficiently. It impacts your mood. When you don't feel good, you might not notice, but I have been a monumental bitch because I don't feel good in my body. And I didn't even realize it. I thought that I was the most pleasant person to be around until somebody close to me was like, girl, get it together. This ain't it. But I think that a lot of women try to convince themselves that, oh, no, like I completely separate that. But do you though? Do you think that you're showing up right now to your family in the mood that you think they deserve as much as you would if you felt your best in your body and in control of these strategies and were eating well and sleeping well and being able to not so much better manage the stress, but not add unnecessary stress with thinking about all the variables that the wellness industry tries to make you believe that you have to follow. Think about that. And here's the thing. This is not conversations that I'm driving just from my personal experience. This is data from thousands of women that I have worked with and probably another thousands that I have spoken to. And I have worked with thousands of women who have realized that fat loss isn't just about the number on the scale. This isn't a conversation about the pant size. This isn't a conversation about the size of the belly. I actually had a conversation yesterday with someone, amazing woman, like love her. The conversation started with her, and this is a very high level C-suite executive. She's leading a team. I think she said like 50. Like the woman is a machine. And she was saying it's my belly. But then whenever we start to peel the layers, it wasn't about the belly. It was about her not being able to play with her grandkids like she would like to. It's about her noticing that slowly she's turning away opportunities to speak in front of her team. Because the last time that she did it, she saw a photo and she didn't like how she looked. So now she can tell that she's like pulling away, that she sometimes avoids social interactions. And this person, it's not that she lacks the confidence. She's incredibly successful. And this isn't about the belly. This isn't about the excess weight per se, but it's about what that brings. The possibility of health issues, which then she's not going to be able to live the best life and be the best grandmother that she wants to be. by going on a vacation and not being able to enjoy as much because she doesn't feel as comfortable in her swimming suit like she used to. About not being able to show up for her team like she used to because she's not feeling her best, because her energy is being impacted. So this isn't a conversation about just fat or just fat loss or just calories. This is a conversation about how all this noise impacts someone's quality of life. It's about how you can truly be free by simplifying the process, by talking about the things that truly move the needle instead of the feel-good, fluffy stuff that modern wellness wants you to believe that it what moves the needle, but it doesn't. Which then brings me to talking about what is it that women actually need. And from my experience as a coach and as a woman who is busy as shit, and sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do it? And this is from someone who has done all the complicated stuff, who has done the extremes, who has done the all or nothing. What women right now actually need are simple strategies. They're rooted in science and not feel-good terminologies. Not that one ingredient that is going to change your life, because you can change that one ingredient, but if everything else stays shit, you're going to have a bunch of shit with that one nice ingredient. Nothing's going to change. They need a plan that fits the season of life that they're in, not a strategy that feels like another full-time job. Because if these women are already pulling 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks, sometimes even 70, how the hell is it that they're going to incorporate another full-time job there? Hours in the gym, getting ingredient from here and getting the organic from there, and you can't. Women need support that considers hormones, stress, and the reality of being on all the time. And most importantly, they need a safe space to say, yes, I want to feel good in my body without judgment. Yes, I want to have more energy. And you know what? I have some vanity goals too. I want to feel good in my body. I want to look good in a bikini. Because this sanitized version of wellness is not even allowing women to say that they want to look good. And this is coming from somebody who speaks with women every single day. They almost apologize. They're like, oh my God, I don't want to sound vain. And I'm like, girl, you're talking to someone who won the biggest vanity contest on the planet. Do not apologize. You are in the right place. Because there is nothing wrong with wanting to look hot as fuck. Nothing wrong with that. But whenever we're talking about fat loss and calories and being healthy, that is not the only part of the conversation. It's a part of the conversation because if you don't feel good in your body and if you don't feel your best, that is going to have a negative impact in your well-being, in your mindset, how you show up. But it's about all the other things too. So it's not that we need less talk about fat loss. We need smarter conversations about it, a non-obsessive conversation about it. We need to rethink what health actually means. And I have a whole other podcast about that as well, which I'm going to link in the show notes, because I feel like people are becoming so obsessed with healthy that it becomes unhealthy. And that's where I think that a lot of the modern wellness movement is going to go. Because people are being so stressed about that one ingredient that is so toxic. They lose the big picture by focusing on the little picture. They lose the forest for the trees. And ultimately, as women, as a society, and as an industry, if we have fitness professionals listening to this, wellness professionals, we need to stop avoiding the real conversation, the real issues, and start to talk about what the problem is. And guess what? Some people will be offended. It just is. But my hope is that the more we talk about it in a way that is constructive, the way that simplifies the process, in a way that shows people that it isn't about the aesthetics, which, listen, ain't nothing wrong with being about aesthetics, but this isn't just about the aesthetics. It's about the trickle-down effect that it has in all areas of life. This is what we need to be talking about. And fitness professionals as a whole need to stop unnecessarily complicating stuff, because women who are busy and already are stressed, hormonal, overworked, they are on all the time. It feels like they have the weight of the world on their back. They do not need more complicated shit. They just don't. So I want you listening today to, one, stop apologizing for having fat loss goals. Because if you have fat loss goals and you're not feeling your best, chances are that it is having a trickle-down effect. It isn't just about the fat. It isn't just about the clothes not fitting. It's about the parties that you're missing. It's about the promotion you're not asking for. It's about the energy that you don't have because you're constantly thinking about what you're going to eat next. And if I eat this, is that going to mess it up? Oh my God, I'm so hungry. I need to, do this detox, but then you become hangry. Like, we need to stop thinking about fat loss as something that is like terrible, but as something that is very likely to be the foundation of a lot of the changes that need to happen in your life. And I'm not saying that fat loss at all costs is going to be the solution to all problems, but doing so in a way that doesn't consume your life is going to be the first step. And we can only do that by simplifying the process. So let's just stop avoiding, the difficult conversations and start talking about the real strategies, the better strategies, the simpler strategies. That is my goal for you. So do I think that we can talk about wellness without talking about fat loss? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And despite what the current climate wants honest fitness professionals to do, which is to sugarcoat and to dance around the problem, I refuse to do it. I'm committed to telling the truth. And sometimes, like a conversation that I've had recently, it might go sideways. I might have to tell the person, I don't think I'm the right coach for you. I don't think that I'm the right speaker for your event. And that's okay. All right, ladies, thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your feedback on this podcast. So please share your thoughts with me. Send me a message on Instagram or send a fan mail. The links are all in the show notes. I would love to hear, honestly, what are your thoughts? Share with me. Do you think that you can talk about wellness without talking about fat loss? This is my opinion. I would love to hear yours. See you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.